Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Information Warfare Pavilion for the next in our series of speakers. I'm not going to do long introductions for any of these because you don't want to hear me, you want to hear them. So without much further ado, Mr. John Pope from PEO C4I and Space Systems. Sir?
All right, good afternoon. That's a typical acquisition guide. I was listening to Emma Becker talk this morning, and Manuel Hermosillo was doing a good job, but I noticed they weren't loud enough. So I said, hey, if one microphone doesn't make me loud enough, let's get two microphones. And so I think if for those who are standing, if you can hear okay, that'd be good. Nothing worse as we get older to stand around and not be able to hear. All right, so it's after lunch. You might detect in my voice 3 weeks in a row flying back and forth to DC. I picked up somebody's head cold. It's almost gone, no fever. There's some hand sanitizer here probably somewhere. But so I've got 8 slides to kind of, and this is one of them. So we're going to step through some things, and then I want to leave plenty of time for questions. And I think I've got enough folks, whether it's me or smart folks in the audience, to make sure we get to all your questions. So I'm going to push buttons here. So one of the things is, the partnership we have with industry, with our fellow PEOs, across the warfare centers, with academia. I mean, it's all part of how we kind of build our story. And so, we are absolutely, as everybody would be, you should be aligned to what the defense strategy should be aligned to what your boss thinks, and you should be, aligned to where is industry going and what's the best things we can pull, from industry, partnering with industry to make our warfighters most lethal. But if you look at the bottom of the picture, and I've used this one, if you've seen this probably a few times, the portfolio of the PEO, and I'll give you a little more detail, is about 130 different programs and projects, 133, spread across, a portfolio. And when I was a PM, that was how you were successful. I took care of my program, I fielded it, I took care of whatever the logistics things were, and if the other guy who connected to me didn't work, that was his problem. But the OV1 charts you always see with the lightning bolts, and we're prone to doing just the same thing, really tears those things down and says, hey, what's the end-to-end capability you're after? So one area we're trying to figure out as we look at both a modernize, innovate, and defend kind of story is, I'm starting on the right, and I need your help to continue to stay to the left. And then we're doing that integration not just on a DDG, or not just on an aircraft carrier. We're doing that with our international partners. We're doing that with Military Sea Lift Command. We're doing that with our Marine Corps partners to make sure that we connect seamlessly with them. So when somebody says, oh, that's a pretty straightforward engineering question, well, the reality is you got to pick the context, and then you'll see how easy or hard it is. So this is the snapshot of the PEO. It's kind of part of my transparency story. Across, with $4 billion, almost $4 billion of funding coming through us, we're under a lot of pressure. We talk about perform to plan. And fiscal pressures to make sure that we're spending and getting those dollars applied to warfighting capability on time, and fully supported. That we on the contracting piece, absolutely critical to us that our partnership with you and partnership with our contracting competency to make sure that we are executing. We're not executing for the warfighter if we are waiting on a contract action or we've been incomplete on doing something and we're hanging you up from delivering. So, and competitive contracts and small business, absolutely an area that we pursue. Workforce is a blended workforce of mission funded, military embedded teammates from our warfare centers, and absolutely you can see our industry partners are there with us, helping us to make sure we're moving in the right direction and assisting us. The program count is there. You can see there's no aircraft carriers, there's no Joint Strike Fighters in there. There are a few large programs, but as you can imagine, in information warfare, there's a good, fair population of smaller programs. I would call them smaller, agile programs, but there are also some programs that have been around a long time, and they were agile at their time, and there's a need to retire them. So one of the areas you'll see is, as we try and pursue, how do we get the new capabilities into the fleet? But just importantly, and if my PMW 760 teammates are here, they'll probably wave their hand. There's been a big effort to pursue reduction of the orphan systems that are out in the fleet. So there are systems that they've been tried and true, worked great, but we want them out of the fleet. We want modern software-defined radios. We want modern networks and modern, command and control features. We don't want to carry around an old version of GeeksM that we are having challenging times keeping it patched. And then the platforms, the velocity of what we do, 3,400 modernization touches to every ship and shore establishment in the Navy is a big deal for us. It doesn't help if we've done everything else right and we don't get it to the fleet. We don't get it to the fleet on time, and we don't get it to them with the right logistics support. So again, this is an area where we don't do it by ourselves, and I look forward to your partnership here. All right, I'm going to change it up with a new slide. A month and a half ago, Secretary Gertz took us to his RDA offsite, and he had a Professor Herman Leonard from Harvard Business School come in and talk to us about where innovation lives in an organization. So let me set up this picture. So the y-axis is probability of a major change while you're underway. So that point is if you're down a lower left quadrant and you're executing your program and you are in production, you're building it, the odds that something's going to change radically while you're executing are fairly low. And then on the x-axis is the known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. As you move up into the explore zone, upper right, the discussion was, this is where I don't really know where I'm going or what we're going to find, and that's a collective we. The odds that something's going to change while I'm working on this are extremely high, so I need the ability to be able to adapt to that. And then in the middle zone is kind of the transformation zone. So you could take a look at this and sort of say, well, maybe that middle of the page is kind of like, remember the valley of death discussion. And you could put it that way. I've kind of put it in a different way. So what I filled in the middle is, on the words are, in execution, those are our programs that the PEO and you all are executing right now. We're doing them, we're providing them to the fleet, and our goal is to make them better, faster, cheaper, and more lethal every time we iterate on them, but we pretty much know what we're doing there. In the upper right is things that we're after. This is, again, we're DARPA, ONR, the labs, industry, academia. This is where some of the innovative things, and you see all the right buzzwords in there, are really important to us to bring that new capability to the warfighter. And so what's in the middle, and which again, you remember the old valley of death discussion, the things in the upper right sometimes don't get there into the fleet. Something didn't work right. We didn't set up the environment right. But you see in the middle, and you see some of the words that you've heard around here with Compile to Combat in 24, the IW platform, things like the digital twin and virtual training. The way I'm looking at those are things that help the things in the upper right get to the execution phase. If we don't set up the right environment to make it easy for new innovations, new solutions to show up in the fleet, we're not doing ourselves any good. Admiral Becker got a question this morning on SBIRs. Great solutions coming out of SBIRs. You know, one of them is somebody asked him for an example. One of them was a small business that's doing very small anti-jam GPS antennas. And so one of the things that came in on a SBIR, our PMW 170 team with the GPS team is figuring out how that small a footprint has a lot of applicability on the new smaller platforms. That came in via SBIR. The other one that sticks in my mind, because it's not everything's IT or C4I, our PMW 770 team working on VLF communications. Some extremely high power, obviously low frequency communications. And some of the power supplies and some of the technologies on that, you know, there's a failure rate, there's a corrosion issue. And again, a SBIR came in and said, hey, I've got an innovative technology that you can use as a coating that'll make these very low, I mean, face it, how many VLF parts do you ever go buy in this day and age? So these are very exquisitely designed pieces of gear, and this coating technology that came out of the SBIR helped us extend the service life of some of our equipment. So those are things, you know, the SBIR piece that lives in the upper right quadrant, and I'm looking for, you know, help to kind of, you know, to make sure they get to the execution. So I guess the piece, you know, what I would ask, you know, for our industry teams and our lab teams is, if you have a great idea, you could be in any one of these three areas, and please bring it. You know, if you've got the innovative idea and we want to nurture it along, we want you to bring it. And the transformational part, I mean, it is absolutely critical. If we don't do the middle, then the left is not very adept at doing some of the things we need, and that transformational capability, just again, the compile to combat, and I'm going to force you to see the slide at the end. But the things we're doing there is where I need your help, because I think it helps move things from top to bottom. So that's kind of and so that was the theme we had at the offsite. Secretary Gertz challenged all the PEOs, what's your picture that looks like this? What are you doing? And I would say in the C4I and space arena, I think it's a rich environment for us to work this. We work it, again, with industry, with our warfare centers. So I look for your ideas on this. You didn't see, by the way, I'll dive into it. When Mr. Hermosillo was up, the question came up about 5G. See, I'm trying to get ahead of some of your questions. You don't see 5G on here yet. You know, we are, the PEO and really the Navy is looking at 5G and DoD and how we're going to use it. The question earlier was where are some places where 5G technology would apply with the Navy? And I'm about a little bit read up on this, so if I'll be happy for somebody who has a better answer if the question comes up in more detail. But the Navy has picked several bases and sites to be, you know, pilot sites for how we're going to use 5G. And so, and one of them here is in San Diego. I think there's another one. I'm looking for my hand help. I think there's at least one here in Point Loma, and there's one at a air station. The idea being is, where does 5G work from again, a smart base, smart warehouse, smart schoolhouse. Pick your depot level where you're moving equipment around. And what we're looking at from the PEO is, where does it apply afloat? Where does it apply on the pier? And we want to make sure that, you know, we love the speed of 5G. I would just say that as part of us understanding that technology and some of the new RF bands that it transmits in, you know, one of the things that's important to somebody in the Navy is that sometimes I want to turn off and reduce my, you know, emissions of RF. And so one of the things we absolutely want to understand about any of these new technologies is, what band do they radiate into? How do I control them? Am I allowed to control them? And things like that. So part of these pilots are to really help us understand those kinds of things, especially in a tactical environment. Okay. So one of the things you're going to hear, and you've been hearing from us, is our, you know, as we do the information warfare digital execution plan. You know, one of the things you see with the IWDP across the middle, all those icons, You know, every one of them, applies across what we've been doing in the PEO for the last couple of years. The important thing is, these capabilities feed into things that we're doing with DMO, Navy operational architecture, and it's been certainly a big piece of our compile to combat in 24 hours. So, it's these kinds of things, and you'll see a little bit more detail. And then as you talk to our folks and sort of see where we're going in each of these, you'll see as we're taking some that are fairly mature and making sure we've got them applied afloat. Some that we are pushing the new technologies into to see where we can, how we can use them more. There's areas where we're going to experiment with and try things out. And so those are kind of the key pieces of how we build back to my 133 programs. I don't want my 133 programs trying to figure this out 133 times. So one of the things we're looking at across the PEO is where can we figure these out with you all and make sure that we get these common solutions ready so that if you have a great idea, we're not trying to make it up as we go. All right, a couple slides to go. One of the things on the taking this and making it real, and Dr. Parker's in the front row, so I'll be happy to pass your hard questions to him. But his idea a couple years ago was, it's great to have a plan, but what's the execution that we're doing? What's the way that every one of those areas, we're measuring ourselves, setting goals, seeing how we're doing this year, next year, how is the funding is set up for it? Are we hitting what we laid out for? It's an actual execution plan. I'm not quite ready to call it a performed plan, but it's part of what we're doing to make sure that we're making progress and we're holding ourselves accountable to get these capabilities ready so that, again, if you have an idea and you can leverage this, or if you have an idea and you want to help us with one of these rows, they're absolutely, we're open for that engagement. So one of these things that we're working on a way to make sure more of this is publicly available so you see where we're making progress, maybe where we're struggling, and you might have an idea to help us. And so there's a much more detailed version of this, but they didn't give me the green light to pull it out. But the idea is to show that where we're going on all these areas. And a couple examples. You certainly hear about the digital twin discussions with our IWS partners. So those are areas where we in PEO IWS are looking to make sure, where can we leverage, essentially commodity compute and storage infrastructure to not only enable the combat systems to have a digital twin, but where can we be sharing some of that infrastructure so on the ship, the sailor and technician maybe is able to see, hey, this is the same compute stack as down the hall, down the passageway. And so it maybe we're loading different things on it, but we're driving some commonality. The other thing, one of the things we recently done on USS Pinckney is we took a digital twin of her Geeks M load, and we're able to bring that back to the beach. So one of the areas we're looking at on our version of digital twin is how much of the network and the applications that are on the ships can I bring back to the beach so that I can recreate if the ship has an issue, if the ship has a casualty that they're looking for some assistance on. Can I bring up that twin of the ship and be able to verify and help the sailor remotely get that system back online? And one of the other areas we're looking at, especially on the Agile Core Services, and you'll see a little bit more of it in the next slide, is to absolutely make sure that if there's about 200 programs that ride the Canes network on a carrier, if every one of those 200 programs brought all their own stack of services, mapping services, database services, track management services, why do I need to do that 200 times? So one of the things that we've been working hard with industry is evolving the Agile Core Services. So I bring a common stack that many of the applications can leverage and use. And so you'll hear some more about the progress we're making on that. All right, I told you I was going to give you the compile to combat slide. You've probably seen it every AFCEA you've been at for the last couple of years. What I'll tell you, the piece that I will focus on is on the pyramid, in the orange cap of the pyramid where it says apps. That's just builds on what I just talked about with Agile Core Services. I want to make sure we're bringing, and again, across the bottom, pick your environment: afloat, expeditionary, at a shore, mock, and on the your far left is on a cloud environment ashore. If you're bringing and developing an application that's value added to the warfighter, I'm interested in making sure that I'm bringing the maximum of everything else but the orange top of that pyramid. The value added to the warfighter is in that. What I want to make sure is I'm bringing and enabling you who has innovation to bring that part that's value added, and I'll take care of your cybersecurity. I'll take care of your hosting environment and your networking off the ship and your bandwidth off the ship. I mean, that's the piece that when we look sometimes on our ships today, we've recreated that pyramid over and over again, and that's not the way we want to go forward. It's not the way we want to spend money. It's not the way we want to spend money many times, because it's not the most efficient. So that's that first day, first dollar piece. If you didn't hear Dolores Washburn talk to that last year, that's us saying, if you want to bring innovation to the fleet, use your first day and your first dollar to go work innovation and not work infrastructure. And I think my last slide is the required, but only a subset of things that are coming up for industry opportunities. I mean, you all know across the bottom, where on our public website for NavWar, where you go find what's going on. These are just a sample of some of the things that we're going after, and I'll tell you that some of them require a hardware investment. When it talks about cryptographic enclosures and battle space gliders and GPNTS, which is a GPS product, some of those are definitely in the hardware information warfare domain. But there's many of them that we're, again, riding on that information warfare platform that we're trying to make sure that as those opportunities come out, we're asking you to spend your first day and first dollar working on those kinds of capabilities. And I think that's it. I will just close with, I talk to our PEO teammates probably every week about the partnerships that go on. I've been around this PEO in SPAWAR, NavWar for a few years, and as I said in the beginning, I remember when success looked like I brought my program in and I don't care about the other guy. I will tell you that that is absolutely changing in our environment. Our partnerships with industry, our partnerships with our fellow warfare centers, not just the NavWar warfare centers, and our partnership with the other PEOs is constant. We are not successful saying, well, I brought that satellite terminal and I hope it provides all that you need. I brought the network, I hope it provides all that you need. And certainly in the cybersecurity front, you can't just say, well, this cybersecurity solution should work, turn it on and let's see how it works. So those are areas where we're absolutely looking forward to getting the questions and the partnering to get those things right. So with that, I'll stop and ready for any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Millhouse. Thanks for your presentation. Sure. I had a question on, I noticed on your budget chart you had a fair amount of money set aside for international programs, and wondered if you could just provide a little bit of detail on what your PEO is doing in those areas. Sure.
Our international programs and our international program office is PMW 740. It runs a range of major command and control systems, major communication systems, all the way down to custom solutions to meet a partner nation's maritime domain awareness needs, ISR needs, and so that runs a range of I think every one of our product program offices has, a foreign military sale partnering. Not only are they doing work with a partner nation, a lot of times you'll find it's a NAVWAR and a NAVC partnering together on that foreign military sale to make sure that new ship that they're buying has not only the ship systems but the C4I systems. So it's ever changing. One of the things is people have been talking about with the risk management framework and cybersecurity. As we've been struggling to figure out how to do that quickly with our U.S. products, it's equally challenging for FMS partners to make sure that they have the right cybersecurity environment to allow them to have an ATO. We haven't found the magic answer to that, but I think that's another area where we're working to see is as we simplify and get things right for us, can we translate that over to our FMS partners?
Thank you.
Hi, Dale Herdigan, MITRE. Can you comment a little bit on your Navy Marine Corps integration efforts that are going on?
Absolutely. So the question was on our Navy Marine Corps integration efforts. So the one program office, so integration program office, PMW 750, has one of their duties is also working with the Marine Corps to do our blue and support of green. And so one of those is with our Marine Corps partners, when they embark aboard our ships, they don't come on board like an air wing and then leave at the end of the deployment. They come on board, and somewhere during the deployment, they may get off, and we need to be able to move their environment, their equipment, their network capability onto the beach. So one of the partnering things we're trying to figure out with them is, in some cases, they'll bring a bunch of equipment, of network equipment, and plug it into our network. What we're trying to figure out is how can I better host them. And I think if you heard Mr. Weiss at lunchtime discussion where people have multiple email addresses, our Marines embarking and disembarking end up in that same mode. So we're trying to figure out a way to get them on our ships, integrated in using the full ship systems, and then when they need to leave, we have those things streamlined as best we can. We're also looking at Marine Corps specific requirements on bandwidth they need off the ship, cybersecurity products they need to make sure that their information traverses the network correctly. And then also just to learn from the Marine Corps, there's a lot of things that they're doing that's very light, very quick. And to some degree, I don't care what color it is, if it's painted green or haze gray, if it's a piece of communications equipment that we can install on the ship and it gets the capability we need. So it's a two-way learning between us and the Marines about what are they seeing that we could leverage in the Navy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, John. My name is Dave Crocker. So this morning, I was listening to the Saints talk, or the CNO and the generals talked about readiness, and then of course the type commanders dialogues. They were talking about how the surface warfare enterprise, naval aviation enterprise are working so hard to make sure they got all the right data so they can ensure that they're optimally ready to deploy. Part of that discussion were the systems that go onto the ships, the systems that go into the aircraft. I'm wondering if you can talk to the data feeds that either are part of the naval aviation enterprise and surface warfare enterprise solutions, or can we do a better job at making sure that your information is fed into those enterprises so that we know that the ships are optimally ready to deploy, that the aircraft all have the same systems, we have the right training and the right support structures.
All right, I'll try and do that credit. One of the areas that we've been working, and this is a partnership with our Fleet Readiness Directorate on, and I can't get the acronym, so it's RAVEN, but the idea is our readiness dashboard that ties into our cyber situational awareness. And so one of the things, and we all grew up this way, everybody has their spreadsheets, everybody has their databases, everybody has their favorite data sources. So one of the areas within CSA, within PMW 130 and our FRD partners with Raven is to pull that data And I think you saw it in one of the previous briefs on those, Mr. Hermosia's brief on the dashboards. So the reality, what we're really trying to do is make sure we have access to the data that the type commanders are using for readiness decisions, and whether it's the CNO cyber readiness dashboard, or it's things like, are there trained ITs on board USS Higgins who's getting ready to deploy? And there's lots of people watching that, but when you pull it together, it starts to become more powerful. We use that information at NAVWAR is to look at readiness drivers. Do we see one DDG that seems to be having more failures in this particular system? And then when you cross that against, hey, how'd they do on their last cyber inspection? How are they doing on manning of that critical rate? You might see a correlation that said, well, it's not really the system. We didn't give the sailors enough training to operate that correctly. So we're trying to pull that data and then make it, instead of saying, if I'm at Surf 4, I'm going to go build my own database. What I'm trying to do is make that available, and you can make any dashboard you want. You can, as long as you have the right access to the data, we'll set that up for you. And the idea being is we're all drawing off the same set of data. So if we're going to make some readiness decisions, it's not like, well, my data didn't say that. I'm like, no, it's all the same information. So it's an area where, again, we're leveraging heavily off of industry. There's no secret sauce to how to make the data available. You've certainly heard plenty today that data, though, does need to be protected, because as you start to aggregate that data about the readiness of a ship, you absolutely want to make sure only the right people have access to that. All right, you're all being nice to me, that's good. All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all, and I'll be around, and if you're brave enough to come up and see me, you're welcome. If you'd rather have a safer discussion, you can talk to Dr. Parker, and he's right here in the front row. He'd be happy to help you, but that's a good way of making this happen. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll reconvene here at 14:45 for Vice Admiral Brown.